the point is those two little girls
Mhm.
deserve somebody to protect them. I believe that we're called to do that as a society, as a church, and certainly as law enforcement.
Mhm.
And it always fires me up to go after bad guys that go after kids.
Well, hey, friends, and welcome back to the Empowered Life podcast. And I am so glad that you're here. So, January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And today's episode is one that I believe will not only inform you, but can truly empower you. So, when we talk about the reality of human trafficking, I know that it can feel very overwhelming. But education and awareness are key to ending this injustice. And so, my hope is that this conversation will help break down some of the very common misconceptions that many of us carry, and that it will bring clarity to what trafficking really looks like, and that it will open your eyes to the reality that, yes, this is happening right here in our own communities. And there is something that every one of us can do about it. Because the more that we understand, the better equipped we are to recognize vulnerability and then to respond with compassion, and the best of all, to be a part of prevention. So I am so honored to sit down with a man who has truly dedicated his entire life to protecting the vulnerable. So today we are joined with Tarrant County Sheriff Bill Waybourn, and I want to tell you a little bit about the man you're going to have the opportunity to meet today. So Sheriff Waybourn has spent more than 4 decades in public service. He started in the U.S. Air Force, later became the youngest police chief in the state of Texas. He led Dalworthington Gardens Public Safety Department for 31 years before he was elected as the Tarrant County Sheriff. So during his tenure, he created the Tarrant County's nationally recognized human trafficking unit and the intelligence department and multiple mental health focused initiatives. So he is known for pioneering proactive, prevention centered approaches to trafficking and for advocating for trauma informed public safety. And in recent years, he was honored as Claremont Institute's 2024 Sheriff of the Year. He received 2025 Sheriff Association of Texas Tom Telespin Award for Top Texas Sheriff. And he was appointed 2025 ATF's National Board and just recently elected Vice President of the Major County Sheriffs of Texas. And so, y'all, he is a tremendous advocate and a voice for the vulnerable. And so today, what we're going to talk about is what he's seeing on the front lines and how prevention actually begins with strengthening and supporting vulnerable youth long before exploitation ever takes shape. So I hope you will settle in and join us for this very important conversation that I believe will stir your heart and expand your understanding and strengthen your resolve to be a part of the solution. So let's get started. Sheriff, I am so honored that you have come. I know you are an incredibly busy man. So the fact that you said yes to this tells me how important this is to you.
It is very important.
Yeah. Well, I am honored. And I really think in order for us to understand the rest of your story and kind of have some context as to what you do and why you do it, maybe you can start by kind of taking us back to the beginning and what shaped your desire to live a life of service.
Well, I tell you, I was blessed to be raised in a small town in southeastern New Mexico by a Christian family.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Mom and dad was typical Americans chasing the American dream. Dad was a World War II veteran, marched with Patton, and full of character.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was 8 years old, we cowboyed and rodeoed and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of lessons learned on a rodeo field,
Yeah, I bet.
and also in pushing cows. When I was 8 years old, my father called me to his bedside, and what he had to say to this 8-year-old boy. Now I was number 7 of 8 kids,
Mm-hmm.
and 6 sisters and 1 older brother. He said, "Son, I'm not going to be here for for the rest of your life. So I need you to think about some things." And basically, he said, "You're going to have to learn what's right." And he was talking about biblical principles.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "And once you learn about it, you need to live by those principles.
Mm-hmm.
And once you decide to live by them, you need to know that people will test you and you will have to fight for those principles and be prepared to give your life for them.
Wow.
He's telling an 8-year-old this. Well, my father was ill, and he was very ill, and he
Mm.
knew that he was dying.
Mm-hmm.
And 6 weeks later, he was.
Mm.
And that's the last true conversation I had with him. So, more than anything, that time with him shaped my life.
Yeah.
And so, as I leaned forward in life and grew up and came to Texas as still a teenager
Mm-hmm.
and ended up graduating from high school here in Arlington,
Mm-hmm.
is that my brother was a police officer. And I knew from a young age I wanted to serve in the military and I wanted to be a cop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what I did. I
Wow.
graduated from high school, spent some time bumming around, joined the Air Force, which changed my life from a perspective, not from a Christian standpoint, but
Right.
from a life perspective.
Right.
And that led to law enforcement and
Mm-hmm.
aggressively pursuing it. And I've been in there ever since,
Yeah.
and can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah. I love that so much. And something we say here on the show is that empowered people empower people. And it's very clear that your father empowered you.
Absolutely.
And his message of empowerment was that it doesn't just stop with you, that then you go on and you empower other people.
Absolutely.
And I love that he spoke that life over you. And at 8,
At
like,
8 years old.
it's incredible. And then the lessons you learned in the military just really shaped your drive, your discipline.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The Air Force gave me many tools and demonstrated many things that I need to think about.
Yeah, I love it. I think so much of our life can go back to our parents and how we were shaped at those formative years. So I think that definitely helps us understand your leadership. And so, with that in mind, I want us to talk about the things that you've built here in Tarrant County. And I know that you have pioneered some pretty incredible programs that have gained national attention. So let's talk about the human trafficking unit. What is it? How did that start?
Well, I was coming into office and I was asking questions about that very issue. Who's gathering intel? What are we doing about human trafficking?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was nothing.
Mm.
We were doing nothing. And no, not throwing any agencies.
Yeah.
Nobody was doing anything.
What year was this?
17,
Okay.
2017. So when I got in, I knew I was in the middle of a budget year. So the sheriff, a lot of people think we have lots and lots of power, which we do, but we don't.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I do is have the right to reassign people.
Right.
So I overviewed the sheriff's office with some help, not by myself, and I was able to pick 4 people, including a leader. And we said, okay, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wanting to do it, and by prayer and the grace of God, a 501c group of
Mm-hmm.
these guys were former intelligence guys, special forces guys, and they were privately funded
Mm-hmm.
to look for traffickers. And they said, we can train y'all to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we sent them off to northern New Mexico at that time, and we trained these guys up, and they came back and they began to there was nobody to go to say, hey, what's this look like?
Right.
There was none of that. And we started going to work, and we took a different philosophy about somebody who would be considered a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
And what we quickly found was these people had, these 20 and 21 and 22 and 23-year-old women
Mm-hmm.
had been in this since they were 13 or 14. So there was a whole normal trauma
Yeah.
thing that this was just normal.
Yeah.
But we found many times there were traffickers.
Mm-hmm.
So we then created a relationship with our 501cs, including Unbound,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been the biggest help. And we, instead of putting these people in jail,
Mm-hmm.
we would say, here you go. We'd set the table for restoration,
I love that.
set the table for hopefully having a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that we were seeing, and this is going to be very important to what you just said, at the beginning of this about the vulnerability and who are they targeting?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're targeting those people who come from homes that are absolutely in disarray. They're
Mm-hmm.
coming from foster care. They're
Mm-hmm.
coming from uh, places where they're not loved nor cared about, are
Right.
missed,
Mm-hmm.
are missed.
Wow.
So the vulnerable population that we're looking at is those people,
Right.
and and like I said, 13, 14 years old when it starts,
Mm-hmm.
as on average.
Mm.
And so we began to go at that and learned as we went.
Mm-hmm.
And our team did an incredible job. Our commander, Kevin Turner, who's about to retire, he's been the first and only commander.
Right.
So he's been just awesome.
Yeah.
And in fact, he's deployed to Poland to teach them when they were dealing with the Ukrainians, because that
Mm-hmm.
was a heavy trafficked area over there.
Right. Wow.
So I hope
That
that answered your question.
no, it did, and it leads me to so many other questions too. But I'm just, well, let's start with this. Like, what was it that you saw that put that on your heart? Because you came right in and said, "What are we doing about this?" And we've got to do something. So, what were you seeing that made that feel so urgent?
Well, I saw stories where, there were 16 and 17-year-olds and 15-year-olds that were being picked up that were, in the sex trade business.
Mm-hmm.
And we also knew that, there were some foreign issues going on, but really a lot of home issues.
Yeah.
And so I saw that, and it's really that, again, the fleeing of the fatherless child out
Yes.
there.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that firsthand, and I knew these kids were out here. And as a police chief, I experienced it where, we were picking up 14 and 15-year-old kids, girls mainly,
Mm-hmm.
and we're being used for this. But in a small town and the small resources, we couldn't get everybody fired up about it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but when I became sheriff, that was
That
one of
was
the
going
things
to
that said, "Hey,
change.
we're going to go do
Yeah.
this."
So, how do you feel that shifting the perspective from a young lady being a prostitute versus being a victim, um, how did that change the game?
Well, it changed it in many ways. Is one that we realized that we need to be empathetic.
Yeah.
You talked about trauma
Mm-hmm.
conversations. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to be empathetic to where they've been, and then we need to get them in front of people who are professional counselors that
Mm-hmm.
can start to figure out that trauma
Yeah.
piece and start down the road of hopefully healing.
Yeah.
And but when we saw that happening, and when we engaged our 501(c)s, it was a total education process
Mm-hmm.
from the therapist to folks like Unbound, and Valiant Heart was another group,
Uh-huh.
and we started changing that focus. And listen, hang on here,
Right.
you know, and you talk about the mental health piece.
Mm-hmm.
It's right there,
Yeah.
and so when we saw that, we said these people don't need to be in
Yeah.
jail;
Right.
they need to be treated.
And our focus maybe needs to be less on prosecuting them and more on finding the trafficker.
Finding the trafficker and
Yeah.
putting them in jail, they're very evil people.
Yes. Well, I know another huge part of the work you're doing is your work in the mental health space and the reforming work you're doing there. So, how does that overlap with the trafficking scene and what I'm sure there's an overlap? So, help us understand that.
There is an overlap, and mental health is just pardon the term, a booming business these
Mm,
days. For perspective, when I came into office in 2017, one of the first briefings I got was on our mental health problem in the jail. These are people incarcerated,
mm-hmm,
and 25% of that population had a mental health issue.
mm,
Well, fast forward to 2025, it's closer to 70% that we now know have mental health issues.
wow.
These ladies that have gone through this,
Mm-hmm,
they have been oppressed,
mm-hmm,
they have been traumatized, they have used controlled substance
mm-hmm,
to relieve that pain and
mm-hmm,
numbness. THC has been very much on there,
mm-hmm,
which is called caused psychosis.
mm-hmm,
It's caused bipolar issues, schizophrenia. So all those things are kind of wound up in that package
mm-hmm.
a great deal of the times. Some of them are not,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of
Most
times
of the time.
that's what we're going to see.
Yeah. So, what efforts are you guys able to make in that regard?
Well, what we do is trying to have some wraparound services,
Right.
including our MHMR team
Right.
and including like Unbound.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to make sure they have a place secure to be.
Yeah.
We're going to provide them medical services,
Mm-hmm.
mental health services,
Mm-hmm.
and then there will be
Mm-hmm.
some life coaching going on,
Mm-hmm.
and all these organizations are faith based
Yeah. I think
folks.
that is so important because what I've learned about trafficking is that it's a cycle and it's a cycle of vulnerability. So if you take
Mhm.
a person out of a trafficking situation, but you don't walk alongside them in the restoration piece and getting them the mental health resources that they need, then they're still incredibly vulnerable. And
Absolutely.
I'm assuming the likelihood of them being re-trafficked is pretty high in that
It,
situation.
it can be very, very high. If they don't
Yeah,
have that support around them, they'll go
right.
right back to what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we have people that, has been arrested several times
Yeah.
and even they've been in jail. And when they're in jail, they're recruiters
Mm.
inside the jail with the other
Wow.
women,
Yeah.
trying to make it look a little bit glamorous and all
Yeah.
those kind of things.
Right.
But, or at least be able to feed your family.
Yeah.
And so you're right, is
Mm-hmm.
that it is a cycle. And if we can, if you make that wheel a little bit bigger where they might walk a little bit longer with us,
Mm-hmm.
they may stay on the right
Can
path.
break the cycle. I love it.
And we've had a lot of them do it.
Yeah, I'm sure. And dealing with the mental health piece is huge. I can't
Absolutely.
imagine going through what they're going through and not suffering from mental health.
No.
Yeah. Well, I think really understanding your heart and the strategies behind it is so important. But I think people who are listening still feel like trafficking is something that is happening very far away. It's happening in other countries. I think, but not here. I think there's been so many movies that have come out about trafficking. And I think sometimes that can sway people's idea and understanding of what trafficking really looks like. And if we're not educated and aware, then we might miss it. And so I'd love for us to just take some time to unpack what is it really looking like and what here in our communities for those who may not really understand.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. Is that first of all, staggering statistics is that we're moving in and closing in on 1,200 rescues in Tarrant County.
Mm,
So they're here. The business is here. We have sent many, many traffickers to prison.
mm,
And just most recently, we've gotten 40 and 50 years of sentencing
wow.
from Tarrant County jurors
Mm-hmm.
because it is here.
Yeah.
And we have, since our organization started and expanded, others followed, and then even the federal government has come in. So now we have this large metropolitan task force,
Mm-hmm.
to be quite honest. And at the just last week, just last week, and I haven't got the whole numbers, but I think we arrested 20 in a very, very short time period
Wow.
of traffickers and people in promotion and prostitution and people soliciting for sex. Happened right here.
Was this one particular ring or multiple?
Multiple,
Yeah.
multiple
Mm,
people involved. And, we also, the whole, and you talked about the mental health issue. We have
mm-hmm.
this, I refer to it as the trough.
Mm-hmm.
You got human trafficking, and at that trough will be narcotics.
Mm,
At that trough will be traders of people. At that trough will be people that are simply into uh, 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 pictures and
mm-hmm.
films,
Mm-hmm.
specifically in child films and
Mm-hmm.
child stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we recently put a guy in prison for 5 terabytes of child pornography,
Mm,
and right here.
mm-hmm.
And what I tell people all the time is that we're a metropolitan city. We're in an entertainment area,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, the um, the desire for that is
Mm-hmm.
very, very high.
Mm,
And in what I would love to ask our 800 evangelical churches in Tarrant County is get off the bench, get in the game, because what we're seeing too with the Johns
mm-hmm.
is, if I may add to that, is that those guys, according to the therapist, they're looking at 1,000 pictures a day,
Mm,
1,000 pictures a day. And who are they? Well, they're the associate pastor. They're the lieutenant at the police force. They're
mm-hmm.
chancellors of universities.
Mm.
These are the people that we're seeing
Wow.
that are walking up.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as that desire's here, they'll keep coming.
Supply and demand, right?
Supply and demand.
Mm. And these are children on these images that
Oh yeah,
yeah.
as young as less than a year old.
Mm. It's hard to even wrap my brain around that.
Yeah. And for those people listening, pray for my team because they have to sit there and go through that.
Yeah. Which is actually one of the questions I have for you is how do you guys remain hopeful when you are facing such incredible darkness?
We have strong debriefings. We have
Yeah.
peer support issues, and we want to make sure that they always have access to those kind of things.
Yeah.
And going by and checking on them. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
You doing okay?
Right.
And we've got both men and women on that team, and they help each other.
Yeah.
And they know this is not normal.
Yeah. Right. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, prayer, that is the number one thing that we can do
Amen.
for you guys. Well, tell us a little bit about what vulnerability looks like and what we can be, what our listeners can be looking for when it comes to trafficking.
I will tell you that I think mothers can read that cue card faster than I can.
Mm-hmm.
And because vulnerability is going to be that person that is just that vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to see that in their eyes, you're going to see that in their actions and where they're at, that they are struggling to be where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And they want the same things that everybody else wants. They want security, they want to make sure that they're getting fed and watered. Uh, but that vulnerability is going to be from that broken person
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be spotted very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll know them when you see them.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I think moms will know them quicker. Cops will know them,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see the trauma
Mm-hmm.
just in their face and
Yeah.
who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to explain it any more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be the ones that trafficker is going to go after.
Right. You mentioned foster kids are prime targets. We work with orphans here at Allies, also prime targets. These are people who don't necessarily have trusted people in their corner that are teaching them about how to safeguard themselves against these things. So
Right.
that's one population for sure. But even just everyday American kids are being targeted for this, right? Through social media and other avenues.
They are.
Yeah.
And again, these are going to be generally uh, families that are not engaged with their kids.
Yeah.
Uh, and then they want some special attention, or they figure out how to get that attention, or to make that money, or they heard about, hey, this is all you do,
Mm-hmm.
and those kind of things, and they're willing to do that. But
Mm-hmm.
notice that morality of the home is so important.
Yeah, that's where it starts.
Absolutely.
Well, and thinking about, you and your team and how you guys stay strong in the midst of this heavy work, I'm curious if there is a moment or a story that you could share, nothing confidential, obviously, that just kind of fuels you and reminds you this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Well, I tell you, there's a couple of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you one of a 15-year-old that we rescued years ago. And she's a foster kid,
Mm-hmm.
left home. Nobody's looking for her. She was walking across, I believe, a Walmart parking lot when somebody pulled up beside of her and said, "You okay?" What were they doing? They were paying attention
Mm-hmm.
and began to talk to her a little bit. She finally got in the car with him.
Mm-hmm.
They went to a nearby hotel. She was fed. She was fed and then offered some dope
Mm-hmm.
and continued on that route,
Mm-hmm.
beaten at that moment and sexually assaulted. And then she was trafficked, and that trafficker sold her. And the other traffickers were working her 10 to 15 times a day. And she finally, uh, she was standing waiting on the next man,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, she finally was able to escape and came to us.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a photographic memory.
Wow.
And we put 6 people in jail and sent them to prison because of that photographic
Oh,
memory. And just that little girl
yeah.
and she'd only been trafficked for a couple of weeks, but how long do you need to be trafficked? You're
Yeah.
talking about over
Yeah.
100 encounters.
Right.
And so we have that, a 16-year-old that was working at a fast food place, and she went to work there because she couldn't get food at home,
Mm.
and they'd feed her, and the manager would make sure she was fed, and a woman came in and recognized that vulnerability and began to befriend her. And a few weeks went by, and she said, I know you're making minimum wage. You can still stay here and work, but my cousin's got a call center open.
Mm.
And if you'll come and interview him, he's at a hotel room.
Mm.
Same story. She shows up, drugs involved,
Mhm.
and in that particular case, she was beat.
Mhm.
All of those things happen, and then she, just a couple of weeks down the road, entrepreneurs want to always cut overhead,
Mm.
so they lowered the amount of drugs they were giving her.
Mm.
So at one point, she felt like she was pretty sober, and a guy walked into the room, and she courageously stated, "I'm not here on my own free will.
Mm.
This is against my will."
Mm.
And that man said, and her trafficker's just a couple of doors down.
Right.
Says, "Get your clothes on and I'll get you out of here." And he rescued her.
Mm.
Now he was there
Yeah.
for bad purposes,
Right.
but even when he realized that, he was at least like, "Oh no, I can't do
Yeah.
this."
Right.
And we put her trafficker in jail,
Yeah.
and she's, last I heard, she's doing okay.
Wow.
And but the point is those two little girls
Mhm.
deserve somebody to protect them.
They do.
I believe that we're called to do that as a society, as a church, and certainly as law enforcement.
Mhm.
And it always fires me up to go after bad guys that go after kids.
Yeah, for sure. And you think about those two girls and their courage that it took, and how many other lives did they save
Oh
in
yeah,
that step? It wasn't just their life,
no,
you know? And the other thing I love is that you're highlighting them as the heroes here, which says so much about you and the work that you're doing. And I'm just so grateful for that. But I'm sure stories like that definitely fuel you, and
oh
kind of
yeah,
when you are feeling weary of the fight, you got to keep those two faces front of mind.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know that all of us in a perfect world, we would prevent this before it ever starts. And so I want us to kind of talk a little bit about prevention, because I know that's something you care deeply about, and that's the heartbeat of Allies as well. And so, Allies, our sponsor, really believes that um, mentors have the power of stepping into a vulnerable youth's life and helping them, first of all, feel seen and valued and know that they matter, and then helping them understand the traps of the trafficker and to know what to look for, because so many of them are aging out of orphanages sometimes
Yeah,
as early as 15. And I know you've been personally a huge supporter of Allies for many,
right.
many years. So I would love for our listeners to hear, first of all, what drew you to the mission of Allies.
Well, it when I saw what they were doing, when I saw Chris, when he explained his mission, and at that time it was just Russia,
Mm-hmm.
and it touched my heart because we'd adopted kids out of Russia, and I
Mm.
knew the vulnerability over there. I'd saw it firsthand,
Right.
and I knew about the aging out, and this was just an incredible way to do it,
Yeah.
and I refer to it as undercover gospel.
Tell me about that.
Well, is that when they deploy overseas, there's a lot of places. If you start evangelizing in public, you can go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they walk the walk while
Mm-hmm.
teaching skills to our
Mm-hmm.
orphans, or to
Yeah,
these orphans. And when people walk the walk, Christ shows up,
that's right.
and that's what they were doing,
Yeah, I love it.
and doing.
I've heard the quote and I've said it before. I don't know who said it, so I can't take credit, but go and preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words. And
Okay?
that is what our Allies mentors are doing
I,
is,
I love that statement.
yeah. Well, from a law enforcement perspective, what difference does early education and mentorship make?
Well, I will tell you that in America, we did this for a while and stopped it, and we've seen the bad results. Is early intervention and education is incredibly important. And I'm using kind of another side here. We used
Mm-hmm.
to in the 80s and 90s, when we started having drug problems, we sent cops into schools to teach DARE,
Mm-hmm.
and they were teaching it to the youth, the kids, the elementary kids
Yeah.
specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And what we saw is drug use go down. Then we stopped that, and drug use went up.
Mm-hmm.
I think going into schools and looking for the vulnerable kids, the young kids, and begin to teach them and mentor them
Mhm.
at the earliest age possible, at least by third grade or fourth grade,
Mhm.
that you can plant those seeds. And we have seen good results from many variables
Yeah.
that have turned kids' life around where they had something to hang on to,
Yeah.
and they also recognized danger,
Yeah.
even if it was in a good looking suit.
Right. That's so true. And I think I was one of those dare kids. I
Yeah.
remember I remember, poster boards, and they'd have like samples of what the drugs look like. Um, and yeah, for this many years later, it's still made an impact. And so I think you're right of
Hmm.
just educating early, letting them know what the warning signs are, what to look for, that it's not always the scary boogeyman guy
Oh
that's
no.
going to come snatch you. It's a lot of times it's the lover boy tactic. And
Oh yeah.
yeah.
It's the older woman who can mentor you, that's going to
Mm,
nurture you the way you haven't been nurtured.
mm-hmm.
It always say it's like Satan's always at the table, and he'll be the best
Sneaky.
looking one there.
Yeah, that's right. Very appealing.
Hmm.
False job advertisements. Are you seeing that be a one way that they're recruiting a lot of people?
False advertising.
Yeah, like promise of a job.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Is that's always in the beginning where you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get rich,
Mm-hmm.
you might even be famous,
Mm-hmm.
and everything's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
It's always promised at the beginning.
Yeah. I know you've said before that preventing trafficking overseas can actually help the trafficking problem that we're having here. And I want you to help me unpack that, because I think there are people who feel like, we just need to worry about our local problem and not necessarily worry about what's happening in Thailand and all of this. Well, how is it all connected? Beyond the fact that we're all God's children and these are humans no matter where you live.
I will give them a practical connection.
Okay.
Is that the consumption, number one, consumption of pornography is mostly Eastern Europe
Mm,
and some in the Asian countries, uh, probably even more now in the Asian countries.
mm-hmm.
But when trafficking is going on over there,
Mm-hmm.
what we don't realize is American citizens are flying over there,
Mm,
number one. And number two is there will always be a connection either through pornography
mhm,
to us, or there will be is that Chinese are
mhm,
here,
mhm,
and there's Chinese mobsters or organized crime,
mhm,
and those people are here because we know of cases where these young women are sponsored over here, and they think they're going to come over and be models and this, that, and the other, and oh no, they seize their passports and they hang on to them and they enslave them to do what they need to here. So those are direct impacts.
mhm.
But we're seeing that from all over the world.
Right,
They are here from all over the
right.
world.
So it's not a their problem, our problem. It is a global
It's a
problem,
global
and
problem.
it's all connected.
And if we can stop it in Vietnam,
Hmm.
it will help us.
Yeah, that's so important. Well, I think I might have potentially saved your best work for last and your most significant work, and that would be your life as a father. And I know that you and your wife have really lived out this mission at home, um, and that y'all have 10 children,
Correct.
8 of them through adoption, and that alone tells a very powerful story. So I just would love to hear more about your adoption story and how your heart for that has shaped the way you view vulnerabilities.
Well, we've been blessed
Yeah.
uh, with our kids,
Mm-hmm.
and full transparency. Some of them felt like we were just caretakers, and
Mm-hmm.
we rarely hear from them, which is fine. They're full grown people doing fine things.
Yeah.
Is that that adoption story started in 2002. And I was sitting in church and I was listening to the flight of the Russian orphan, which then we had a great term. We were on great terms with Russia,
Mm-hmm.
and they were talking about these 15 kids that had come over, and 14 of them had matched up to a family, and one had not. And he's going back to Russia, and and this is the first time I heard the term, and he's going to be aging out.
Mm-hmm.
And they explained it's basically here's the door, have a good life,
Yeah.
and heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And at that time, my two oldest kids were grown. And I remember going home and talking to Laura that day and saying, what do you think about this? Well, she was a former CPS and social worker, and she says it's very difficult to adopt older kids.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be aware of that. And I said, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, we prayed about it, and I called Gladney, who was doing it, and they said, hey, if you can't find anybody else, call us. Well, they called us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to Russia. We had to go twice. And we went to Russia in spring, in April of '03, and we met our future son,
Mm-hmm.
Dan, and we went to the orphanage. In that orphanage, we walked around that and saw kids. There's probably 130 kids there,
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from 3 and 4 year olds up to 15-year-olds, just right before
Right.
they'd be aging out. And in fact, one of the things, there's this one little boy that kept popping up that was talking to me in Russian, thinking that at
You
some point I'd
understood.
understand.
Yeah.
And of course I didn't. We
Mm-hmm.
took a gazillion pictures while we were there at that orphanage. And then we had to leave. And then we came back a few months later to do court and actually get Dan. And so we got home, and my mother and father-in-law were incredibly supportive and helpful and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it becomes more important than that, is that we go back to Russia, we come home with Dan, and then 6 months later, in March of the following year, Dan gets a letter from his best friend Slava. And he was excited, then he was depressed. And the reason he was depressed is Slava was about to age out.
Mm-hmm.
So he came to us and told us about that. And Laura began to do her research.
Mm-hmm.
And Slava had two brothers. They were not even on the national adoption list in Russia. And you had to be on that for a year
In
before you
order
could
to
be on
get
the
adopted.
international.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we felt like our hands were tied, and so we told Dan, the only thing we can do for those three boys is pray. Let's
Yeah.
just pray for them,
Yeah.
and pray for your friend Slava. About 6 weeks later, Laura calls me, and the reason I'm saying this, folks, God was involved,
Yeah.
is she calls me at the office and says, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "These three boys are up for international adoption, and they're coming over in July, and Gladney's asked us to sponsor them." So not only are they coming to the United States, we were picked at random to sponsor them. And I know it's partly because of Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, "What are we going to do? What does this mean?" And I said, "Well, first things first, you tell the boy to quit praying."
Yeah.
Uh, and
True. Some
and
powerful prayers.
that's right. So those
Mm-hmm.
boys show up, and Meredith, I'm looking at those kids when we finally see them. There's three boys standing there in stair step order.
Mm.
It was the middle boy that followed me all over that orphanage talking to me,
Really? Oh.
and so it was like a reunion.
It's yours. Yeah.
And but more important than that is, unbeknownst to us, my mother-in-law had picked up a picture of the Kazans there,
Mm-hmm.
put it in her Bible to remind her to pray for the Russian orphan. That's the boy in the Bible,
Mm.
is that middle boy.
Wow.
And that is the boy that's in Allies.
That's helping mentor and lead.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those four, they came and stayed with us and went back. And then in the middle of that, we were helping another woman that was pregnant that we ended up we were trying to help her find another family, and ended up being us with a newborn. And long story short, on
Yeah.
Thursday night, it was a Thursday night where she said, "Hey, I'll agree for y'all to adopt him." And Laura says, "When are you due?" And she says, "C-section in the morning."
Wow.
So we had a baby in the house within a few days.
Oh my goodness.
And then after that came Alyssa
Yeah.
and her story. Then after that, Leo, we got him at 6 months, and came from a traumatic event, just like Alyssa. And then finally, our last boy was Caleb, and he was originally adopted from China.
Mm-hmm.
Then a family gave him up for adoption
Mm.
several years later, and we got him. So if you hear about that elected official configuring with the Russians and Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
you got me.
Yeah. Wow. That is such a powerful story of just,
Craziness.
yeah. And when you have this burden and this heart and you're surrendered to God, be careful because you might be part of the solution and
That's
he will
exactly right.
use you. But look at how they have blessed you, I'm sure, in this
Oh, yeah.
in more ways than you can imagine. Do you feel like your children have taught you, or what have your children taught you?
You know, I think they have taught me many things, and I think the one thing that they've taught me is how you start out matters,
Mm,
and because that's the most difficult thing to overcome.
hmm. Wow. And they have a resiliency about them.
Absolutely, they
Yeah.
do. Absolutely, they do. And we're doing okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure that gives you hope for some of the survivors that you encounter, and knowing that your story doesn't have to define you, and
Hmm.
this can end very differently, and there's light at the end.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and far as those victims is what I'd want people to know is a fellow God image deserves another opportunity.
Mm,
If we can provide it, set the table for success. If they don't
yeah.
take it,
Yeah. You've done your part.
yep,
That's our part.
that's right.
Wow. Is there anything that we have not talked about that is heavy on your heart, or something that you want our listeners to know?
Well, I'd want the listeners to know today is that one, right here in Tarrant County, there are right at 250 kids ready for adoption through
Mm-hmm.
CPS. Unfortunately, most of their ages are 8 and higher.
Mm-hmm.
It costs less than $200 to make that adoption, maybe even none. And and those kids need a forever home. We know that those 250 kids, if they stay in perpetual foster care, they have somewhere in the neighborhood of a 60% chance of being involved in some vulnerable issue
Mm,
in custody, in a jail, or mental health issue. And a
mm-hmm.
lot of them could end up in trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
If they get a home forever, I believe the statistics are is that that chance goes down below 10%.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
A consistent home is
Makes
so
all the
important.
difference. Yeah. Wow. Well, that is a very clear takeaway that I think is for somebody that's listening.
I hope so.
And I thank you for the model that you've set of, yeah, being obedient to what God puts on your heart, and for fighting for those who don't have a voice, and for standing up for the vulnerable. And I'm just so grateful for you, and so honored that you came. And before we wrap up, I have something kind of fun I wanted to do. So I'm a born and raised Texas girl, actually born in Fort Worth. And so
Okay.
I felt like I'm sitting down with the sheriff of Cowtown. I
Yeah.
have to have my cowboy hat. So
Oh,
yeah, we're gonna finish. Thanks, Coop. With this is the first time I've worn this on the show. Maybe it'll become my new thing.
I love it.
But
I
yeah,
love it.
wow. I thank you again for what you're doing and for your work. And I'm believing big things for you and for your team, and for um, justice.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. Well, friends, I hope today deepened your understanding about the realities of trafficking, because what we've heard is that trafficking rarely begins with just a dramatic moment. It actually begins quietly in vulnerability and in isolation. And the very first step in preventing this is awareness. And we cannot afford to believe that this is just some distant, disconnected thing that happens somewhere else. It is happening here, and all around the world. There are millions of children today, right while we're sitting here having this conversation, that are being groomed long before anyone ever sees a sign of it. This is not a geographic issue. It is not a political issue. It is a humanity issue, which means that it is all of our problem, all of our responsibility, and all of our opportunity. And so, what really encourages me is knowing that prevention does work. You've heard it here, something about stepping into a vulnerable child's life and just being consistent and present. It is a game changer. When a child is seen, when a young person is equipped, and when someone shows up with presence and compassion, darkness loses ground. And y'all, that is the heartbeat of the work that Sheriff Waybourn and his team are doing every day. And it's also why we are so passionate about mentorship here at Allies, because prevention and empowerment, they go hand in hand. Surrounding vulnerable youth with education and support and just someone in their corner is one of the most powerful ways that we can stop trafficking before it even starts. And so, if you're wondering how to take a step or how to get involved in prevention and awareness efforts, you can definitely learn more at alliesyouth.org. If today stirred something in you, some compassion, curiosity, or just a desire to learn more, I want to invite you to take that next step. Follow us on Empowered Life Podcast. Share if they are feeling that the next step is to look into adoption through CPS. What's that step?
Look up and call all church homes right here in Fort Worth,
Okay.
and they will guide you, connect you to
Yeah.
the people you need to talk to.
That's awesome. You know, taking the next step may just be that you make that call. That's not you committing. You're just learning more and pray about it and see where the Lord leads you. But being informed and being aware and supporting organizations like Allies is how you can be a part of the solution. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for choosing to live a life that brings hope to very dark places. We'll see you next time.